I had always been careful not to intrude. Ever since the first time I met Kale, I had learned that patience was as essential as breathing. Kale wasn't like anyone I had ever known, at least not anyone human. He came from a planet called Vithera, light years away, and his species communicated in ways that were more feeling than sound, more thought than words. To understand him, I had to observe, listen, and most importantly, respect boundaries. But boundaries are delicate, fragile things. Sometimes, even the most careful person can break them. It was a gray, drizzling morning on Earth. I had been in the laboratory for nearly 5 hours, tinkering with one of the atmospheric regulators that Kale had designed himself. His machines were unlike any human tech, a mix of bioluminescent components and organic circuits that pulsed like veins. I had just replaced a faulty energy conduit when I realized I was late for our scheduled meeting. I dashed through the narrow corridors of the station, my boots sloshing in the shallow puddles from the leak above. Kale's room was at the far end, behind a door marked with symbols I had only recently begun to understand. Each symbol represented a state of being or emotion. The first time I had seen them, I had asked Kale, half joking, if he kept a diary in code. He had simply emitted a low hum that vibrated through the walls, a sound of quiet amusement. I knocked softly, remembering the protocols. No response. Kale? I whispered, unsure if he would even perceive my words. The door was slightly ajar. I hesitated. Normally, he would send some sort of signal, a glow, a hum, a subtle shift in the air pressure to indicate I could enter. But there was nothing. I swallowed, thinking maybe he had forgotten our meeting. Or perhaps he was meditating. I nudged the door open further and stepped inside. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air seemed to change. It thickened, pulsing with a tension I had never felt before. Kale was there, yes, but he wasn't in the room as I had ever seen him. His form shimmered, fluctuating between the corporeal and the ethereal. His skin, usually a muted silver with faint streaks of violet, was now a blinding cascade of light, as though the very energy of his being was trying to escape him. Kale. My voice was small, uncertain. He didn't answer. Or maybe he couldn't. His luminescence flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls in impossible geometries. The hum I had grown used to, the one that conveyed laughter, concern, or curiosity, was now jagged and uneven, almost painful to hear. I realized, too late, that I had intruded at the wrong time. This wasn't a simple meditation or a resting state. Kale was undergoing a transformation, one that humans weren't meant to witness. His species had processes that involved a merging of mind and matter, a communion with the energy of their planet. Observing it uninvited could be destabilizing. Kale, I didn't mean to. I stumbled over my words, my hands raised in apology, though I doubted he could understand them. The room shuddered as though it were alive, responding to my presence. Lights bent around us, and I felt my stomach lurch. Then, suddenly, Kale's form collapsed inward, folding into himself like a flower closing at night. The air pressure normalized, the colors dimmed, and he stood or hovered, as he sometimes did, in front of me, smaller now, subdued. His gaze, or what I interpreted as a gaze, was sharp. It pierced me with a mixture of confusion, frustration, and embarrassment. That last one startled me. Aliens didn't typically feel embarrassment in the human sense. I walked into your... I tried again, but he raised one delicate, translucent hand, stopping me. You are not meant to witness this, he said, his voice calm, but carrying an edge of hurt. This is a process that is private. I am not ready. I nodded quickly, trying to contain my panic. I'm sorry, Kale. I didn't know. I should have waited. He waved me off, the gesture both gentle and firm. It is not just about waiting. It is about timing, about the alignment of energy. You cannot understand the complexities of what I am undergoing. To interfere, even with your presence, creates ripples. Ripples. The word stuck with me. I imagined a pond. My intrusion, a small pebble dropped into its center, sending waves through a delicate ecosystem I barely understood. Kale took a step back and inhaled, or something analogous to inhaling. The air around him shimmered again, but this time, it wasn't chaotic. It was tentative, testing like a child learning to walk. I am stabilized enough, he continued. You may stay, but do not move too close. Do not speak unless necessary. Do not. I understand. I interrupted, though I had no real understanding. My curiosity burned, but I forced it down. I had to trust him. I had to respect him. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. Time felt distorted in that room. I watched as Kale's form gradually returned to its usual luminescent elegance, his colors softening to gentle silver and violet. The hum of his presence filled the room once more, steady and comforting. You see, he said finally, his voice back to its normal cadence. This is why privacy is essential. I understand, I said again. And this time I meant it. He studied me for a long moment, his large, almond-shaped eyes reflecting the ambient lights. Then he shifted closer, not in threat, but in trust. You care for me, he said simply. I do, I admitted, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. Then you must also learn restraint, he said. Compassion without restraint can be as destructive as cruelty. His words sank deep. I realized that my mistake, entering uninvited, wasn't just about decorum. I had nearly disrupted a critical process, one that could have endangered him. The thought made my chest tighten. I'll be more careful, I promised, a solemn vow I intended to keep. Kale nodded, the tension in his form easing. Good. Now, perhaps, we can continue with what we were doing yesterday. I smiled weakly. You mean the atmospheric calibrations? He chuckled, a sound like wind through crystalline chimes. Yes. But now I have learned something from you as well. Your presence, though ill-timed, reminded me that I cannot isolate myself entirely. There is value in sharing, even riskily, with those we trust. We spent the next several hours working side by side, adjusting the complex machinery that regulated the station's energy and environmental flows. I learned to anticipate his gestures, to understand his subtle cues, to respect the moments when silence was mandatory. And Kale, for his part, seemed more attuned to my presence, more willing to guide me without words. When our work was done, we sat quietly in the observation chamber, looking out at the endless expanse of space. Stars blinked like distant eyes, indifferent and eternal. I am still not ready for the next transformation, Kale said softly, almost to himself. But perhaps, one day, I will allow you to witness it. I'll be ready whenever you are, I said, not fully understanding what I was agreeing to, but knowing that it didn't matter. Some things were beyond comprehension. They could only be approached with trust, patience, and a willingness to learn. He turned his gaze toward me, a faint smile illuminating his features. Then you are more human than most humans I have known. The hum of the station and the pulse of his presence wrapped around me like a gentle current. I had walked into the room by accident, yes, but I had also crossed a threshold of understanding and trust. A line had been drawn, a boundary respected, and in that, something extraordinary had emerged. And as the stars continued their silent vigil, I realized that friendships, even interstellar ones, were not just about shared adventures. They were about timing, patience, and the courage to step back when the universe told you to wait. I stayed by his side until the lights dimmed and the station fell into a quiet rhythm, the kind that felt almost alive. Kale was stable, serene, and I, despite my earlier misstep, felt profoundly connected to him in ways words could never capture. That day, I learned that sometimes the greatest lessons come from mistakes. And sometimes, the most remarkable connections are forged not by bold actions, but by quiet respect, patience, and understanding. Kale and I had both grown that day. And in the vast emptiness of space, among stars and unknown worlds, I knew that this was only the beginning. When our work was done, we moved to the observation chamber, the room bathed in soft violet light from Kale's own bioluminescence. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, each a silent witness to our quiet triumphs and mistakes. I had walked into his room by accident, yes, but in doing so, I had been given a rare glimpse into the very core of his being. Kale hovered in front of the viewport, his form now stable, almost serene. "You saw me at my most vulnerable," he said softly. "Not many are allowed that. You did not run. That matters." I didn't know what I was witnessing, I admitted. But I didn't want to hurt you. I would never intentionally intrude. His large eyes, iridescent and thoughtful, fixed on mine. Intentions are important, but so is learning from them. You stayed when it would have been easier to flee. That shows courage. There was a pause, a moment of silence where only the hum of the station filled the air. And in that silence, I felt it. A bridge had formed between us, more real and enduring than any words could describe. "I am not ready for the next phase of my transformation," Kale admitted. "It is a process that takes years, and perhaps even centuries. But today you are part of it. That cannot be undone. You have earned a place by my side if you wish it." I swallowed, my chest tight. "I would be honored, Kale. To be here, to learn, to respect," he finished for me, and there was a softness in his tone I hadn't heard before. "Yes, that too." We remained there for hours, observing the distant planets, the glimmering nebulas, and the constellations that would never hold human names. I realized then that what I had thought of as friendship had deepened into something rarer, trust beyond comprehension, a bond that could survive even mistakes like mine. Finally, Kale lowered himself onto the floor, a gesture I had learned signaled both relaxation and acceptance. I sat beside him, careful not to touch, careful not to intrude, but simply present. He pulsed faintly, a gentle rhythm that seemed to sync with my own heartbeat. "I cannot promise you what the future holds," he said, "but I can promise that you will not be shut out. That is rare. That is precious. And it is enough." For the first time, I allowed myself to truly exhale, releasing the tension I hadn't realized I had been holding. I had made a mistake, yes, but that mistake had led to understanding, connection, and a profound respect that neither of us could have predicted. As the station drifted through the void, Kale's form shimmered faintly in the dim light. I watched him, marveling at the alien elegance, the beauty of a being so different from me, yet capable of the same feelings I held close to my heart. "You are ready for tomorrow," he said, more a statement than a question. "And perhaps I am, too. One step at a time. Together." I nodded, knowing that the days ahead would hold more challenges, more mysteries, and more transformations than I could imagine. But I also knew this. I had earned Kale's trust, and he had allowed me to witness the rawest part of his being. That trust, fragile yet unbreakable, was the truest gift of all. The stars continued their silent vigil. The station hummed around us, alive with possibilities. And in that vast, infinite space, I finally understood that accidents could lead to the most extraordinary discoveries about others, about the universe, and about ourselves. Kale and I stayed there until the lights dimmed, the hum settling into a quiet, gentle rhythm. That night, I realized something important. Friendship, and perhaps something deeper, was not about the absence of mistakes. It was about patience, respect, and the courage to step back when the universe demanded it. And as the station floated among the stars, I knew one thing with certainty. This was not the end of our story. It was only the beginning.